Welcome to Shadow Fable. Don't forget to subscribe. Picture this. A life once marked by regret and loss, now draped in the eerie weight of memories that may not even be your own. Thomas Carver had never imagined that grief could manifest as a tangible presence. Yet, as he stepped off the bus into the autumn chill of New England, he sensed the pull of something inexplicable. He was a retired history professor, his mind forever steeped in the annals of the past, and now his own history was beginning to feel like a series of fragmented recollections, stitched together by an invisible hand. His late wife, Eleanor, had been his anchor in a turbulent world, and her sudden passing had left behind a silence that spoke louder than any cry. Now, wandering aimlessly, Thomas was drawn to an old town where every corner seemed to whisper echoes of lives lived and lost. The town of Carrow's End, with its narrow, winding streets and time-worn brick facades, appeared to exist on the fringes of memory itself. Thomas's steps were heavy as he approached the local library, a building rumored to hold secrets beyond the dusty pages of its countless tomes. The library's imposing structure, with its tall, arched windows and intricate carvings on the stone exterior, seemed less a repository of literature and more a mausoleum of forgotten stories. It was here that Thomas's journey into the heart of his own fractured recollection would begin. Inside, the library exuded a somber majesty. The faint scent of old paper and leather-bound volumes permeated the air, intermingled with an undercurrent of something ineffable, an aura of lingering sorrow. Thomas moved slowly along the aisles, his fingers trailing over the spines of books as if seeking guidance. It was not long before he discovered a peculiar section that seemed out of place, a collection of journals and diaries bound in faded, cracked leather, none of which bore any clear cataloging. Their entries were dated from decades past, yet some of the handwriting bore an uncanny resemblance to his own meticulous script. At first, Thomas dismissed it as a trick of his troubled mind, a desperate search for any connection to his lost love. But as he leafed through the brittle pages, a chill ran down his spine. The diary of a man named Theodore was filled with vivid accounts of a secret library that appeared only under certain conditions, a place where the boundaries of reality thinned, and where the past was not merely recorded, but relived. Theodore described moments of inexplicable déjà vu, and the overwhelming sensation that time was unwinding like an ancient spool of thread, each unwound strand carrying with it a forgotten memory. The entries spoke of decisions made in moments of despair, of lives altered by forces beyond human comprehension. Thomas felt an uncanny resonance in Theodore's words, a reflection of the disquiet that had gnawed at him since Eleanor's departure. Returning to his modest rented room above a weathered inn, Thomas set the diary on the small wooden desk beside a flickering lamp. Night had descended upon Carrow's End, cloaking the town in shadows and deepening the silence that blanketed every street. The storm outside was a gentle, persistent murmur, a backdrop to the relentless cadence of his thoughts. Thomas began to read aloud, his voice trembling slightly as he recounted Theodore's account of the mysterious library. The more he read, the more the diary's words began to weave themselves into the fabric of his own recollections. Memories that he had long buried, moments of regret, joy, and heartbreak, surged forth with a force that was almost unbearable. In the days that followed, Thomas found himself returning to the library with a compulsion that defied logic. Each visit seemed to peel back layers of his life he had never known were hidden, revealing intimate details of experiences that felt both intimately familiar and utterly alien. He discovered letters tucked between the pages of antique volumes, fragments of conversations that recounted events he had no memory of living. Every new discovery was like a puzzle piece that threatened to complete a picture of his past. A past he now doubted was truly his own. During one particularly stormy afternoon, as rain battered the windows and the wind howled through the deserted corridors of the library, Thomas found a faded photograph wedged behind a row of encyclopedias. The image depicted a younger man and woman, both with eyes that seemed to harbor secrets too deep for words. The man's face bore a striking resemblance to his own, while the woman's gentle smile evoked memories of Eleanor. The photograph was dated decades earlier, in a time Thomas had never experienced. It was as if the relic had been waiting for him, its silent testimony challenging the very nature of his existence. Who was this man in the photograph, and what connection did he have to the library and the uncanny journals? Haunted by questions that echoed in the depths of his mind, Thomas began to document his daily experiences. He scribbled frantically in a battered notebook, noting every sensation, every inexplicable moment of familiarity. At times, the diary entries blurred the lines between past and present, reality and memory. He recalled attending a lecture on American history where, in the midst of discussing long-forgotten events, he experienced a disconcerting sense of being observed by unseen eyes. In another instance, he found himself standing before an old mirror, watching as the reflection in the glass flickered and shifted, momentarily revealing the silhouette of a figure standing behind him. Each incident deepened his conviction that something far more sinister than grief was at play. Slowly, the library became both a sanctuary and a labyrinth, a place where Thomas could confront the elusive fragments of his identity. The pages of Theodore's diary hinted at an occult ritual, a means to rewrite or perhaps reclaim one's lost past. Yet the ritual, described in hushed and cryptic language, was fraught with peril. It spoke of a delicate balance between memory and oblivion, of the risk that the act of remembrance could unmoor one from the very essence of self. Thomas's inner turmoil was palpable as he wrestled with the duality of yearning for connection and fearing the erosion of his present reality. One evening, as Thomas sat in his room with the diary open before him, the wind outside transformed into a mournful wail. Shadows danced along the walls, their movement synchronized with the trembling of his hands as he read a passage that described a doorway, a threshold between the known and the inexplicable. The diary detailed how the door, hidden behind a shelf in the library, could be unlocked only at a moment when the boundary between memory and reality was at its thinnest. Thomas's heart pounded with a mix of trepidation and resolve. He decided then that he must find this hidden doorway, convinced that it held the key to understanding the origins of his mysterious recollections. Guided by a newfound determination, Thomas returned to the library under the cover of a moonless night. The corridors were eerily quiet, the only sound his cautious footsteps echoing against the stone floor. He moved through the labyrinthine stacks until he found himself before a section that seemed to pulse with an inexplicable energy. There, behind a shelf laden with archaic texts, he discovered a narrow, almost imperceptible gap, a door concealed by the weight of forgotten years. With trembling hands, he pushed it open, revealing a dimly lit passage that descended into a subterranean chamber. The chamber was an antechamber of memories, a repository of relics that defied time. Dust motes floated in the stale air as Thomas's eyes adjusted to the gloom. On a pedestal in the center of the room rested a singular ancient book bound in worn, cracked leather. Its cover was embossed with symbols that defied immediate interpretation, evoking both a sense of dread and wonder. The inscriptions, though faded, seemed to shimmer in the flickering light of his torch, as if they were alive with the echoes of untold stories. As he opened the book, Thomas was met with a series of handwritten accounts that chronicled not just his own life, but lives that paralleled his in uncanny ways. The entries spoke of choices made in moments of despair, of love and loss intermingled with the quiet torment of regret. With each word he read, Thomas felt as though the very essence of his soul was being laid bare, exposing vulnerabilities he had long kept hidden. It was then that a revelation struck him, a thought that chilled him to the bone. Perhaps these records were not mere coincidences, but rather a deliberate tapestry woven by forces beyond his understanding, meant to remind him that memory itself was a weighty burden. In the days that followed, the discovery of the hidden chamber and its mysterious book transformed Thomas's life into an unrelenting spiral of introspection and dread. He became increasingly isolated, consumed by the need to reconcile the fragmented pieces of his past with the present that now felt unbearably alien. The familiar sights of Caro's End began to warp under the pressure of his thoughts, as if the town itself were a living canvas upon which his memories were painted in shifting, elusive hues. Then, one evening, as Thomas sat by the window in his modest room, he noticed something that defied explanation. A soft, rhythmic tapping sounded at the door, a cadence that mirrored the pulse of his own racing heart. He opened the door to find no one there, only a small, handwritten note resting on the threshold. In a delicate script, the note read, "To remember is to awaken the truth. Are you ready to face what lies beneath?" The words sent a shiver down his spine, and for a moment, Thomas wondered if the note had been meant for someone else entirely. Yet, deep down, he understood that it was a summons, a final invitation to confront the mystery of his own existence. Haunted by the note, Thomas embarked on one last journey through the labyrinth of the library, retracing his steps to the hidden chamber. In that quiet, subterranean space, the ancient book lay open on the pedestal as if awaiting his return. With a steadying breath, he reached out and turned to the final page. What he found was a single, stark sentence that seemed to encapsulate the entire enigma. Your past is not your own. It is a mosaic of all who have ever remembered. At that moment, the air grew thick with the weight of realization. Every memory, every fleeting thought of Eleanor, and every long-forgotten dream coalesced into a single, inescapable truth. Thomas's mind reeled as he grappled with the revelation that his life was not an isolated tapestry, but rather a shared relic of countless souls, each echoing across the boundaries of time. The burden of remembrance, which he had so desperately sought to understand, now loomed as a spectral presence, an ever-present reminder that the past was an intricate network of intertwined lives, forever bound by the collective weight of memory. As the storm outside subsided and the first hints of dawn began to break, Thomas felt a profound, unsettling calm settle over him. He realized that to live was to bear the weight of all those who had come before, to carry their joys and sorrows like invisible scars upon one's soul. In that quiet, surreal moment, as he gazed at his own reflection in the window, a face etched with lines of loss and newfound understanding, Thomas wondered if there was ever truly a way to escape the relentless tide of remembrance. The final truth, ambiguous and haunting, lingered in the space between what was known and what could never be undone. And so, as the day began to emerge from the long, oppressive night, Thomas was left with one inescapable question. In the intricate dance of memory and identity, who truly remains in control? The one who remembers, or the collective echo of every forgotten soul? The sound of the old clock in the library's tower marked the passing of time in a steady, unyielding rhythm. It was a reminder that every moment was both an end and a beginning, a continuous interplay of presence and absence. In that final, reflective silence, the realization settled in like a shadow at dusk. The weight of remembrance was not a curse to be borne alone, but an eternal, shared legacy that bound all lives in an endless cycle of loss and rediscovery. And with that, the quiet mystery of Caro's end remained unsolved, its lingering echoes a testament to the fragile, elusive nature of identity itself.